Ridley Scott's newest film, Napoleon, delves into the life of Napoleon Bonaparte. The movie spans a total of 2 hours and 45 minutes, beginning from the execution of the French Queen Marie Antoinette during the Reign of Terror, Napoleon's promotion to the rank of Brigadier General for his victory against the British at the French port of Toulon, to his coronation as Emperor, and then to his disastrous campaign in Russia, which ultimately resulted in his exile on the island of St. Helena. And meanwhile, the film also doesn't hesitate to get into the more personal aspects of Napoleon, in relation to his tumultuous affairs with his wife, Josephine Bonaparte. And while many see this film as Ridley Scott's best since Gladiator, opinions vary, as do ours.
Ridley Scott's film aimed to have a grand portrayal of Napoleon Bonaparte's life, navigating his story, while balancing historical accuracy and drama. While the film portrays major events with accurate historical facts, it simplifies a lot of events in Napoleon's life, sometimes missing out on the details, although still accurately capturing the main point of the story. The movie definitely placed a great emphasis on Napoleon's relationship with Josephine, but the film symbolizes the complexities in the relationship. We know that Josephine played a great part in Napoleon's success and rise to power, which the film didn't quite reveal.
Joaquin Phoenix's portrayal of Napoleon lacks commanding presence associated with the historical figure. Instead, the film often depicts Napoleon in a comical light, deviating from the conventional, austere, and fearsome image. For instance, the portrayal of the coup d'etat of 1795 at the Palace of Versailles shows high-ranking officials initially outraged, chasing Napoleon and threatening him. When narrowly escaping, Napoleon, in a frail voice, exclaimed, "They tried to kill me," with an unexpected sense of femininity.
Now, in this movie, Ridley Scott really goes deep into Napoleon's personal life, especially in relation to his significant other, Josephine Bonaparte. Scenes near the beginning of the movie, like spontaneous playfulness with his wife under the breakfast table, later scenes were throughout the movie, like the sending of various love letters to Josephine Bonaparte even after their divorce, really humanizes Napoleon, which really deviates from the historical or conventional orthodoxy of Napoleon, which paints him as this unattainable, as this elevated stature, who is larger than life, who is more heroine-like. And it really allows the audience to relate to him on a more personal basis. And so, even though this may come at the expense of what is traditionally perceived of Napoleon, it still undoubtedly contributes to a more elevated sense of personal depth and more relatability to Napoleon, which is something we'll touch upon later as well.
So, Ridley Scott's Napoleon, it's a bit of a mixed bag, I'd say. Yeah, so first of all, the fact that the film tried to encapsulate the whole life of Napoleon into one single movie was very ambitious, maybe a bit too much, because Napoleon had a lot of things. Felt that the film was focused too little on just two aspects, his personal life and his battle. Focused too little. I don't think 2 hours and 40 minutes did enough to do the battles justice. I didn't feel that way, certainly. And battles on the big screen were, let's just say, they weren't that great.
It wasn't very accurate at all, and some of the battles weren't depicted correctly. One of the major events that Napoleon went through was his downfall and defeat in Russia. It felt quite rushed and too quick in the movies, with the film just showing their famine through the winter.
The parts that resembled his personal life revolved around Josephine. I feel like it's a bit too intentional at times. In the movie, there were times that the letters exchanged by the couple depicted a loving couple, so consistently updating each other on their respective sides, like what happened with their day, what their events were, whether it was decisions made in the battlefield by Napoleon or calls of support by Josephine.
In the movie, it includes a scene of Napoleon abandoning his commanding army in Egypt, all because he heard about his wife's affairs back in France. I feel that this change in historical accuracy was really just not needed, even if it was all just for showing his affection for Josephine.
And that little scene was too quick, I felt like. One scene it's him in France, and then the next one is him all the way in Egypt. It goes back. Sometimes it just felt a bit too rushed. Again, the fact that the whole life of Napoleon was condensed to 2 hours and 40 minutes in the movie. Impressive. Yeah.
Now, throughout history, there emerges individuals who have great impacts upon society.
Yes.
And Napoleon, whether or not one sees it to be good or bad, is one of them. And so that draws upon the question of whether or not he is a beneficial individual to society or a detrimental one, as well as relating to his personal virtue. And so,
buddy, this is the part where we get salty about things.
yep, William.
Okay, and this is the part where we begin. Good luck to you, mates.
Good luck to you.
All right. So, Napoleon. We watched the movie now, 3 hours later. What do you think about it?
I think that he is a very detrimental person to society. There are nuances, of course, but I think the implications of actions, detrimental implications of the actions, are outweighing the beneficial ones.
That's okay.
Yeah,
and that's a fair point. I think this topic is very nuanced. I think
it is very nuanced.
Yes.
Yeah.
We say this in the
But the thing is, we see that everything in this world is nuanced, right?
Yes.
So one eventually has to take a stand against what is good.
Exactly.
What is bad.
And that is why I believe that Napoleon is beneficial.
And I believe the contrary. So, continue with the flow. Let's consider the first implications of his actions into categories. Categories is what.
Okay. We'll do the categories.
The structure to this debate.
Sure.
All right. So the first category is economic. Let's say not economic. Let's just say in terms of what we cherish most of Western society, democracy. So why do you think Napoleon is a beneficial person to society in terms of democracy, even though he's a dictator?
So Napoleon, as we know, he's a great commander. He rose the ranks because he was a great commander. And through that, he displayed a great leadership. And that is what led him, first of all, to have the opportunity to take this position. And number two, that is what allowed him to excel in this role.
So what does that have to do with democracy, actually? You know, totalitarianism usually...
So you're saying that democracy...
I did not say anything for perspective. You were just saying...
Then what is your opinion? What is your opinion?
My opinion? Yeah, what is your opinion? I have not yet...
so you're just questioning things, but you're not saying anything.
I am questioning things because that is not typically what's viewed as rational. What is Napoleon's personal skills have to do with democracy?
Any great democracy needs a good leader. And whether you believe...
A good leader that is not authoritarian,
whether you believe that Napoleon himself was a totalitarian dictator or not, that is up to you.
When George Washington abdicated his role as general of the American
and become
Revolutionary Unit and
became president of
the United States, and he abdicated the role of president as it should be under the Constitution.
And someone succeeded him and fulfilled the role.
The will of the people. Napoleon did not come to the throne with the will of the people. Actually, he lost a lot of support when he decided to crown himself emperor.
And again, that
is not democratic. That is
authoritarian. And so here comes the question.
Washington is democratic. Napoleon's not.
Well, here is the thing. Both are great leaders. We have to say that. Both are extremely great. But what differs from Napoleon and George Washington is the will to command. If you take a look at the other European states, right? Britain, all the other monarchies in there. Let's see. Dude, okay, let's try. Let's try our best.
Well,
okay. David?
He's making me real comfortable.
You guys do you. Goodbye.
Okay. Oh my god, bro. Okay. And so the other European nations, they had monarchies. Right? The monarchies. People had little to no rights at that time. Even before. That's why the French had a revolution. Back when Napoleon was just a kid.
Yep.
And they had a revolution. They overthrown the king. They sent it to the guillotine. They sent them to the guillotine. So they went and they were beheaded. And so that is the case for many of the European nations at that time. And so Napoleon, because he was such a great commander, because under his leadership he was able to not only not invade, but bring a new sense of order and law and innovation to these nations that are so fixated on monarchies where people have no economic freedom.
A great sense of order of law in European society, right? A sense of order and law that really didn't change from what revolution sought to destroy.
It was Louis XVI and Marie Antoinette, the monarchy in France, who were overthrown as a result of their horrible governing, and then all chaos ensued after that. And so Napoleon was the first person, I'd say, to have a rather stable rule over Europe and France at the time. And so, yeah, and through his rule, through his leadership, he brought a lot of successful campaigns that I don't think would have been done with what you mentioned with George Washington because of a democratic, well, source of policy change. Because he was mainly the person driving all the change, it was more fast and effective to have these changes in place. And so that is why.
Fast and effective by being a dictator.
And that is why.
Is that what you're saying?
That is not what I'm saying. That is not what I'm saying. I'm saying that through not being a dictator, I'm saying that because he was the major one leading all the change, it was more effective and efficient for him to propagate the changes at the time.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. Yeah, but the means, we can all agree on the fact that what he did was ultimately beneficial for European society.
There we go. There we go.
But the ways he did it could have been much more improved. Could have been done in a much more democratic, much more societally beneficial manner. Even more beneficial than the way he did.
Yeah, no, I think that I do agree with you on that as well. But I think that France has tried that. They made the regulatory board of with Robespierre and all that. Don't quote me if I'm wrong.
Okay, France did not try that. Robespierre was a very, very villainous dictator
because
he was
this is what people thought. Because people after the rule of Louis XVI and Marie Antoinette, they wanted a democracy, right? They wanted a democracy, which was not fulfilled.
Yeah.
So it was not fulfilled until 100 years later, I'd say, which by that time, most of the people back then are probably dead. And so the fact that you want a democracy does not necessarily you will get a democracy. But I do think. Let me finish. I do think that some of what Napoleon did could have been improved. I'm a firm believer in democracy. I don't believe in dictatorship. And yeah.
Yeah, so you said that France tried to get a democracy and it failed, right?
They did.
So does it make the people who made it fail?
It was the leaders. No, it was the leaders.
Were the leaders beneficial?
Robespierre was a person who I think everybody thought could have brought glory to France after the throning of the monarchy, but ultimately didn't. And was beheaded.
He was not a beneficial individual.
And was beheaded, and he only lasted for a few years. While Napoleon, on the other hand, lasted for a few decades. That sense of stability, while not necessarily obviously being the paragon of a leader back then, of a political leader back then, and even now, but he still at the time was better than his predecessors.
He definitely was.
Yes.
And
so that's what history does. Everybody.
Yeah. Under this logic, actually, would you say that Stalin was a good individual because he was better than Hitler?
Would I say that? Absolutely not.
Absolutely not. So this logic doesn't really work, right? In comparing historical individuals by comparing.
No, I'm
what
saying
their
within one
predecessor-
country.
Within
Stalin,
one
no,
country.
Stalin and Hitler were from different countries. They're from different.
Okay, so
Just they
was
were
Lenin?
fighting. They were fighting against each other, and so
Okay.
obviously,
Okay, so
there are
okay.
exceptions.
Okay,
That's why the word exists.
there always are exceptions.
Of course,
There always are exceptions.
of course. But what I am saying is that Napoleon was a better example of a leader for France than his predecessor, which
So
You
why
agree
does that? Why does that matter though? I don't
no, it
see
matters
why
because at the
substance
time
in
it
that.
was the best choice.
It was the
because-
best choice, but in
Because here's the thing, because
any comparing people with predecessors, how does that justify that?
that is
what
not
the choice
my
given
point.
about?
Is that Napoleon was a beneficial leader to France.
And that's also my point as well. Actually,
Good, we can arrive to a common standing. Napoleon is beneficial
yeah,
to the whole of France, and one could say he led the change from policy making elsewhere in the world as well. I would say that is the case, but I do agree with you on the fact that some of his policy making could have been better, made in better ways.
yes.
Yeah.
Well, I guess we have arrived at a conclusion.
Yes, I think we have arrived at a common agreeing points, and
That being
As always.
resolution.
yeah, it's always a pleasure to speak with you, Lynn.
Always,
always a
always
pleasure.
a pleasure.
Always a pleasure.